Sorry. Welcome, council, members of the public and staff, to our September 8th council meeting. I'll call the meeting to order. I can have somebody, I have that, sorry, right here. I have a motion moved by Lyle Warden, second by Sam McDonnell. Be it resolved that the council meeting of the Township of South Glengarry now be open at 7 p.m. All in favor of the motion? Motion's carried. Thank you. If I can ask for everyone to please rise for the playing of our national anthem. Crystal, if you would, please. Thank you, Ms. LeBrun. Number 3 is the approval of the agenda. I have a motion moved by Stephanie Jaworski, second by Martin Lang. Be resolved that the council of the Township of South Glengarry approve the agenda. Is there any additions to the agenda, Madam Clerk?
No, there are not to my knowledge.
Thank you. Any additions or from the members of council? Okay, not hearing none, so it'll be as circulated. All in favor of the motion? Motion's carried. Thank you. Any declaration of pecuniary interest? Not seeing none. I have a motion moved by Martin Lang, second by Lyle Warden. Be resolved that the minutes of the regular meeting of council of the Township of South Glengarry, including the closed session minutes held on August 4th, 2020, be adopted as circulated. All in favor of the motion? They're all froze on me.
Councillor Lang, Councillor Jaworski, and myself had our hands up, Mr. Mayor. Can you see us?
I did not see that, so I'm going to just ask for it again because you're all frozen for a couple of seconds on me. So you're all in favor of the motion? Motion's carried. Thank you. I have a motion moved by Sam McDonnell, second by Stephanie Jaworski. Be resolved that the minutes of the special meeting of council of the Township of South Glengarry held on August 4th, 2020 be adopted as circulated. All in favor of the motion? Oh, all in favor? Carried. Thank you. I have a motion moved by Lyle Warden, second by Stephanie Jaworski. Be resolved that the minutes of the public meeting of the council of the Township of South Glengarry held on August 4th, 2020 be adopted as circulated. You heard the motion. All in favor? Motion's carried. Thank you. We'll move to number 6, presentations and delegations, Friends of Summerstown Trails. Mr. LaRue, if you would, please. Vic, you're on mute.
Okay, how am I now?
You're good now.
Am I
Go ahead.
good?
Yep.
All right. Good evening, everyone. Mr. Mayor, councilors, senior staff.
I want to take this opportunity to thank you for giving us the opportunity to voice our concerns and challenges for the coming seasons. We're not just the winter season anymore, as you quite are aware that the fall, winter, and spring has created extreme increase in usage of the trails, and that was quite witnessed in April and May and June once the restrictions came into place, and the Summerstown Trails was full front and center of all the users that we witnessed, and it's to the point now where we have, as an organization, we have to look at what we anticipate and what is most likely going to happen. And as I said, I'm going to give you a little bit of a background of why I'm here tonight, requesting this funding. It all started once the COVID restrictions occurred, and we've seen the extreme traffic at the trails, and it pondered us to see whether or not we can continue to function normally for the up and coming season. And throughout the summer, and as of late, the last month and a half, we had several discussions among ourselves to see whether or not we will be open, or how we would open to the community. Because for most of you already know is that 75% of our active volunteers are retired people. And with that in mind, we have to keep ourselves protected, and as well, most importantly, our community that involves the volunteers, the users, and the staff. So we came to much debate and discussions, and we eventually came to the conclusion that we needed extra help. And we met with the manager of Parks and Recreation, Rick Lattiser, and his assistant, on how we can both assist each other with increasing the additional outdoor activities for our community in a safe and responsible manner. And this not only would increase our strong partnership that we already have, but even make it even stronger as the months and the years follow. But first of all, we had to understand what was our needs for the health guidelines and what was going to be our needs to move forward, whether and to what capacity and what level would we be open. And at that time, our organization met with the Eastern Ontario Health Unit, and they were very instrumental in guiding us and giving us ideas and fulfilling our needs of what to look for and how to prepare and to move forward. And we all are under the restrictions of the guidelines of the health unit, not only for volunteers and coaches, but at the same time for the reopening of an outdoor activity center, which we fall under. And for most of you, we have to come up with a master plan, and that master plan has to be reviewed by the Eastern Ontario Health Unit for us to proceed. So it's not something that we take lightly, and if we are to proceed, this is the manner we have to proceed to provide our normal programming for the community. And most important, adhere to the guidelines that the health unit has put in place for all outdoor recreational facilities, sports facilities. Now, when we come down to the funding requests, our major programming event that produces the most revenue for us is a school program. Last year, we all know there was a labor dispute, and that pretty well killed our revenue stream. It probably knocked it out reduced it by 80 to 90% of our revenue stream from the school program. And this year, it's no secret that all school field trips through the policies of the school boards will have stopped. So now we look internally and say, how can we survive, not only survive, but succeed and exist at a certain degree or at a certain percentage of what we're normally willing and able to exist. And the funding request is based on the needs and the discussions that we had with the health unit, and as well as with the Township Parks and Recreation Department. And we're looking at $26,000, just a little over $26,000. But I just want to highlight the main topics of the funding request, the specifics of it. And in order to continue with our existence, we believe that our rental program has to continue. And in order to do that, we need a staff of 2 on all weekends and Christmas holidays and March break. Now, the numbers that I'm going to give you is based on the weather cooperating from March break through every weekend and over the Christmas holidays up to the March break. So we know what that's going to look like. But at that cost, we're looking at a $12,000 cost for staffing requests. And that includes 2 staffs from our own organization. And these are students, and 1 casual staff from the township in order to assist with the rental program, with trail maintenance, disinfecting, sanitizing, crowd control, and so forth. But again, those are the big numbers with big attendance and the big weekends and with the weather cooperating on all fronts. The other item is the office trailer that we rent on a 4-month basis. In order to accommodate the disinfecting of the equipment, the sanitizing, and the sitting room and changing rooms of all our users and rentals, we up to increase the size of the office trailer substantially to a 60-foot long trailer for a 4-month period. And that cost with delivery and installation and whatnot and hookup is $8,000. So with just those 2 items, you're looking at $20,000 worth of the funding requests in order just to operate with the rental program throughout the season. Again, I'm stressing over those months and over those breaks of the school year. The other $6,000 is talking about PPE, the supplies, disinfectants, maps, signs, brochures, and trail improvements that we're faced with every year. Yes, we are going to have a membership blitz. That membership blitz brings in about $5,000 on an annual basis, and the rentals bring in, on a good season, $3,000. So with those numbers, we're still anticipating that to occur with the membership, should we remain open. And open meaning if we don't provide the product, the membership will drop without grooming and without the assistance from the volunteers and the work going forward. Kaylin, I'm not sure of the time I have. Can you give me the time allotment?
It's normally 15 minutes.
How am I doing, Mr.
I think
Mayor?
you're doing fine. Go ahead.
Okay. And I want to leave a period for Q&A, of course. But in conclusion, with the funding, we can operate almost near normal capacity without the school program, of course, and have our limited events that we normally have, minus the family day, because the family day is something that is well attended with 300 to 500 people on a good day serving food. And that is just something that we don't want to experience, and we don't want to expose our volunteers and the users to the COVID, God forbid. So the family day, we made a decision that we're going to scale back on the family day. There may be a small version of the Family Day spread across the month of February, but that's later to be determined. But so with the funding, it's operation as normal. However, with no funding, all we can focus on is grooming the trails and keeping the parking lot free of snow, and then let the users use the trails as freely as they can. And we're looking at the fall, we're looking at the winter and the spring. And that's the gist of our funding request for this evening. I'd be more than willing to answer any questions from the floor. Thank you. No questions?
No, for some particular reason, you get cut out a few times, so I wasn't sure if you were finished yet, so I apologize, but I'm sure there's
Okay,
going to be
no.
questions. I have a couple people's hands up, so thanks for your presentation, Vic. I'll move off to Deputy Mayor Warden and Councillor Jaworski. Go ahead, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Hey, Vic, thanks very much for your presentation. I always like to see the updates on Facebook that your group does. We are in a time of austerity in regards to the unknowns of COVID, but you know, I think this is a great facility that you are running, and it bodes well with our active living charter. So in the out of the 26,356 that you're requesting, my if memory serves me well, we gave you folks between 9,000 and 14,000 last year. I could be wrong. Is that number included in this request, or is that something? Is this totally COVID related in your? Is this totally COVID related?
This funding request is totally COVID related. We have been privileged to receive a $4,000 grant on an annual basis for the last, I believe, 5 years.
Okay.
The remainder, Councillor Warden, has been in-kind services from the township. Manpower with a backhoe, vegetation cutback, snow removal. So that might be an in-kind dollar value that you have
Right.
received beyond the $4,000.
Okay, so it was just, pardon me, yeah, I couldn't remember the exact number. So the $4,000 was an in-kind. Okay, well, I appreciate your presentation, and I'll let someone else ask a question. Good to see you.
Okay, likewise. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Jaworski.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you very much, Vic, for your presentation. I guess it's more of a comment I'd like to make. You know, in this time, you know, with the COVID pandemic, you know, I think it's well accepted that outdoor activities are the safest activities that we can, you know, participate in, the lowest risk. And so I think, you know, what you have at the Somerstown Trails and encouraging people to continue using it, but in order for them to do it safely, you know, there's changes to how you have to run things. And I respect that your group's taken the time to look at what you need to do to continue operating safely. But I'd like, you know, I just want to express my comment that I think this is the kind of activity we really want to encourage right now, because it is, you know, it's getting it, as Deputy Mayor Warden mentioned, it supports our active living charter, but also really it is some of the healthiest activities we can do right now. So I'm hoping that perhaps with some of the additional COVID funding that we've received for different types of activities and different groups, that perhaps there's something there that might apply to this.
Thank you, Councillor.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Lang, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you. And thank you, Vic, for the presentation.
Hey, how you doing?
Much appreciated. I just want to echo what Mr. Jaworski had said at the end there, that we did receive some money from the province to bump up our funding for extra costs as related to COVID. And I think this might be an area that we could funnel some of those funds into. And so I think, you know,
Great.
I'd be in favor of it, especially if we've got this money from the province, and you know, let's put it towards something like this. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor.
Okay, thank you. And Councillor McDonnell, please.
Thanks, Vic, for the presentation. Always happy to
Aye.
see what you guys are up to. I won't take too much time, but I'll just echo what Mr. Orski and Councillor Lang said, as well as Deputy Mayor Warden. Just I'd like to see what we can do to help. I think that'll fall into Mr. McDonald's hands to look at the finances and see where we've got the space to. Being you're on a county road too, and you're advertised with the county, I believe, for tourism. Maybe there's another avenue we could work together with the warden here sitting at the table and see if we can get some additional dollars, and it's not solely on the township, but I'd like to see if we can do something to help.
All right, thank you, Councillor. Appreciate it.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to turn it over to our CAO, Mr. Mills, if you would, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, through you. Thanks for the presentation, Vic. I had just a couple of questions in terms of timelines. So if we were able to, we're looking at a number of efficiencies because of COVID, but also like members of council have mentioned tonight, we've got some extra funding to assist. Certainly we have a number of things to address in terms of services and operations that we provide. Would it be okay if we came back to you? I know council will decide, but we can come back with, I'd like the opportunity with staff to take a closer look in terms of staffing.
Yep. I'd be more than happy to be part of that if need be. As far as the dollars and cents and the logistics of it. The only thing I need to do is at this time is to book the office trailer, which are very popular throughout Eastern Ontario. And that could be done without any monies exchanged. And I can go on that, yes. Yeah.
Will
So
you
Norm-
still be, will you still, through you, Mr. Mayor? Will
Yep,
you
go
still be able to run the Sunday learn to cross-country ski that I could sign up for?
Yes, we are going to run it. Yeah, we have the means and the volunteers to open up for this Sunday's event. Yes, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
So, Mr. LaRue, normally what happens at this point is we accept your presentation and thank you for your presentation. So we'll send that back to staff. So I'll send it back to our CEO, Mr. Mills, and also Lachlan McDonald, Mr. McDonald, and they'll come back with the report at a later date. Hopefully the next, it may not be the next meeting, but hopefully by October 5th. And then council will make a decision at that point in regards to if it's the full amount or a part of it or where we go from there.
Right. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thanks for your coming out tonight. Thank you.
Have a good meeting.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Okay, we're going to move to number 7, new business, staff reports. One is Place Saint Laurent Phase 4, acceptance of works. Mr. McDonald.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and good evening to all. Place Saint Laurent subdivision Phase 4, the subdivision agreement was approved by council in 2018, and the developer has since that date installed the infrastructure for this development to the base course asphalt level. The subdivision agreement, as is in the staff report, states that there's 4 conditions that the developer must meet for acceptance of the work by the municipality. That being a formal request to accept the works, a statutory declaration from the developer that all of his accounts have been paid to his contractors. The developer's engineer have to sign a certificate stating that they have overseen the work and that the works have been installed in accordance with the designs and the plans and specifications. And they have to supply us, submit to us electronically and hard copy versions of the as-built drawings. In Place Saint Laurent Phase 4, all of these conditions have been met. And based on the conditions of the subdivision agreement, we are recommending that council accept the works, and that would allow the developer to move forward with the next phase, which is satisfying conditions to obtain building permits and start building homes.
Okay, thank you. I'll open it up to questions from members of council. Not seeing none. I have a motion moved by Martin Lang, second by Sam McDonnell. Be resolved that the council of the Township of South Glengarry receive staff report 119-2020, and that council approves the request for the acceptance of works from 2795264 Canada Inc. COB as Place Saint Laurent Developments, Place Saint Laurent Phase 4 subdivision. Heard the motion, all in favor? Motion's carried, thank you. And we'll move to number 2, Energy Efficiency Study RFP 18-2020 award. Mr. McDonald.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a little bit of background on energy efficiency in the township. In 2008, the municipality undertook a study for an energy efficiency audit that was funded through upper level government funding. And in that report, we dealt with 5 specific buildings that were identified for energy efficiency measures. It was a contract that we had with the consultant engineers of that time. It was a performance-based contract that we entered into, and it was a guaranteed savings with the measures that they had identified of just under $50,000 per year. We proceeded with that contract and made the changes to the buildings, things such as lighting retrofits, building envelope improvements, HVAC system upgrades, and we have since moved to natural gas on all of our facilities in the municipality where available, and we have generated those savings over that period of time. We've also in recent years upgraded our hydroelectric street lighting systems with a significant savings in the energy cost there that have paid for the capital output to purchase those lights in a much shorter time frame than what was even anticipated. The savings there generated were approximately about $60,000 per year. So, and that's not included in the chart that's attached to the staff report. But essentially, we are confident that we have taken measures to achieve energy efficiencies over the past 12 years. And now it's time to see what more can be done. So an RFP was issued to ask for submissions to review 28 of the municipal facilities. So a much more comprehensive overview based on an industry standard called the ASHRAE Level 2 standard, which I've provided just an overview of in the staff report under section 8 of the background. So the RFP closed on August 18th, and we had 18 submissions. So very big interest in this project. We are getting more interest in RFPs with our electronic posting on the MERX site, which is an OGRA web-based e-tendering site that most people in the municipal industry and contracting industry seem to follow. So we are getting very good interest. We did have a wide range of prices, and the evaluation team undertook to review the documents that were able to meet the minimum requirement for cost, and also were evaluated based on the team that the consultant was bringing forward, based on the methodology of how they were going to go about the performance of the work. We asked for references and past experience models that they had done of similar projects, and also the schedule. So the submission from Wood Environmental and Infrastructure was the highest scoring in the evaluation matrix, and they are also the lowest bidder. So the funding for this audit is to be drawn from the Modernization Fund, as was indicated by council in the past, and the continuation of the energy efficiency measures and looking at this study does assist us with the sustainability of our infrastructure and strengthening the effectiveness and efficiency of our organization, which is 2 of our primary strategic goals. So administration is confident that Wood Environmental can provide us with the energy efficiency audit at the cost of $24,270 plus HST, and we are recommending that the RFP for the energy efficiency audit be awarded to them in accordance with their submission. And I'm open to any questions, Mr. Mayor, should there be any.
Okay, thank you. I'll open it up to council. Any questions from members of council? I think it's pretty straightforward. Deputy Mayor Warden.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. You want to just a kind of a general question. Do you know if they'll be measuring the metrics For example, I noticed in the last check registry that was sent to council that there was a hot water tank changed at the Williamstown garage. So I just I seen this RFP come out and I seen that and I thought, was there any thought went into if that was the most efficient unit like being replaced? Is this going to kind of give direction to council, to our building managers going forward to say, instead of just replacing an existing unit, this is something that's more efficient. Do you know if this will have that in it?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to a certain extent, Deputy Mayor Warden, yes. Primarily, though, it's an exercise of energy consumption. So the specific situation you have brought forward might not be caught. The ASHRAE Level 2 study will review the energy bills for the last 24 to 36 months. And then they will be going through facility visits. So they will be reviewing the HVAC systems in each of these facilities and providing us input. So I think it is a part of the study, and it's something that I would imagine will be identified in the final report.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions or comments from members of council? Not seeing none. I have a motion moved by Sam McDonnell, second by Martin Lang. Be resolved that staff report 120-2020 be received and that the RFP for the energy audit be awarded to Wood Environmental and Infrastructure Solutions as per their submission of $24,270 plus HST. And furthermore, that the mayor and clerk be authorized to sign any relevant documents. All in favor of the motion? Motion's carried. Thank you. And number 3 is surplus lands, Glen Walter, waterfront part 3 on 14R6524. Mr. McDonald.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is one of the parts of the properties in the Glen Walter waterfront area that was declared as a surplus by council. The registered plan was completed and deposited with the registry office. The adjacent property owners were all approached and provided a letter of an offer to purchase the lands as per the previously determined per acre price. And this is the first of 2 of those parcels that is on this evening's agenda. This is part 3, which is the parcel that would be the next parcel to the east or north, depending on how your perception is there, of the Stinson property.
Okay, thank you. I think council's fully aware of these properties. Is there any comments or questions? Not seeing none. I have a motion moved by Stephanie Jaworski, second by Lyle Warden. Be resolved that staff report 121-2020 be received and that the council of the Township of Glengarry approve the sale of part of lot 9, concession 1, Indian lands, being part of 3 on 14-6524, part of PIN number 67129-0643 to Mark Laurie as per the offer received and the bylaw 52-2020. We read a first, second, third time passed, signed, and sealed in open council this 8th day of September 2020, and furthermore that the mayor and clerk be authorized to sign any relevant documents. All in favor of the motion? Motion's carried. Thank you. Move to number 4, Glen Walter waterfront property, part 10 of 14R6524. Mr. McDonald.
Yeah, I won't go through the whole spiel again because it's the same area, the same parcel of land. This is the 10, which is the most furthest eastern portion of the lands that were where the parcels were created. So again, this is the same as the previous staff report, and again, all of the conditions are the same as was discussed in the past.
Okay, thank you. Any questions from members of council? Oh, sorry, Councillor McDonnell.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'm okay. I made a mistake. I should be fine.
Thank you. I have a motion moved by Lyle Warden, second by Sam McDonnell. Be resolved that staff report 122-2020 be received and that the council of the Township of South Glengarry approve the sale of part of Lot 8 and 9, Concession 1, Indian Lands, being Part 10 on 14R-6524, part of PIN 67129-0643, to Lisa Liberon as per the offer received in that bylaw 53-2020, be read a first, second, and third time, passed, signed, and sealed in open council this 8th day of September 2020. And furthermore, that the mayor and clerk be authorized to sign any relevant documents. All in favor of the motion? Motion's carried. Thank you. Number 5, water wastewater capacity allocations. Mr. McDonald.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. And typically on a normal year, this report would have been provided to council in January or February, and my apologies for not bringing it forward at that time. We had in November of last year updated council on the capacity issues in Glen Walter when there was a request for plastering the Laurent Phase 5. So the numbers haven't really changed significantly since that point. This is the capacity that's available in both the Lancaster and the Glen Walter water and wastewater systems. And not to beat a dead horse, we do understand and appreciate that there is an issue with very little capacity in Glen Walter for wastewater. Once we have calculated in our pre-approved connections that are reserved capacity. So we do have, as council has clearly understood and is working towards solutions with the Glen Walter master plan and upgrades to the Glen Walter system. We do need to increase our capacity in Glen Walter so that we don't at some point in the near future paralyze our opportunity for growth. But this is the updated numbers. What I can tell you is that though we have taken some measures in Glen Walter to improve the average flow, and we're trending in a pretty decent direction so far this year. Instead of 780 cubic meters per day, we're running an average down around 730. So we've made some improvements to the infrastructure, and we feel that we're identifying some other areas where we can make further improvements. It's a work in progress, but something that needs to be a high priority.
Okay, thank you for the presentation. Any questions or comments from members of council? I believe Councillor McDonnell.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, Yoan, I was wondering if you could give me an idea of the lots that we did allocate to Place Saint Laurent last fall or this winter. Are those included in this, or are they still outlying from what's there? Or can you kind of go into depth on them a little bit?
Yeah, there was 20 lots that were allocated to Place Saint Laurent Phase 5. They are included in the 78 pre-approved connections. There are another 42 lots in the Purcell subdivision that were approved through an agreement in 2016. And then the remainder are just some lots in Glen Walter where the fire hall property, those lots. There's connections there. And there's also about 12 remaining connections in Place Saint Laurent Phase 3 that still need to be developed. So those 78 lots are not off of the 9 that's remaining. There's 9 plus the 78 that were pre-approved.
Okay, no, that's that was what I was looking for. I guess a subsequent comment from me would be, I think this report really highlights the urgency that we need to put the council and administration have to make a decision on how we're going to move forward with water and wastewater in Glen Walter. The more connections we put in that area, the more people that are helping pay any development we do or any infrastructure we invest in. And I personally would like to see something moved on here in the near future. And I'd like to see the township go it alone, but that's another meeting.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions or comments from members of council? Deputy Mayor Warden.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. Yoan, has there been any updates to the work that staff are doing to mitigate external water getting into the system? I know that we have the authority to, if we suspect that someone's sub pump is going into the sewer line, it's my understanding that we have the authority to go in and look at, to make sure that they're not. And I think we need to get serious about that, because like as Councillor McDonnell said, like we're right at the end of the line for this system unless we don't do something. And I know in the past couple of years there's been efforts made to reduce what's being infiltrated into that system. But do you know if there's a plan, an imminent plan, or going forward to get better at that? Because I know it's an area that I'm pretty sure it's an area that we could improve on.
Yeah, and through you, Mr. Mayor, the issues with what is in fact an illegal connection, there is a bylaw that provides municipality with the ability to lay $1,000 fine should we identify those areas. They are pretty difficult to nail down. What we have been concentrating on in the last year is the actual infrastructure, the pipes for the mains, and making some repairs to that. We're looking at some repairs to our utility holes, the formerly called manholes, that will also reduce the flow. So the short answer to your question is we haven't made a huge effort to deal with illegal connections. It's a difficult thing to do, and access to people's personal homes is also a difficult thing to have as well.
Subsequent, Mr. Mayor.
Go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks for that, Johan. And I do understand it's a sensitive thing. I just want to make sure I'm correct. All residents in Glenwalter, Lancaster that are receiving water, they all have a meter on their house, correct? And so if one of those meters becomes not working, like we're aware of that. Correct. Is that something that staff's aware of and they're on top of having them updated?
Yes, and through you, Mr. Mayor, you are correct. Each of the water services has a meter on the residence, and those meters are read every 2 months. So when we get those reports, if there's a battery dead on a meter, we find out about it and we respond accordingly.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions or comments? Not seeing none, I have a motion moved by Martin Lang, second by Stephanie Jaworski. Be resolved that the council receive and file staff report 123-2020, being a report which details available capacity for allocation of the Glenwalter and Lancaster water and wastewater systems. And furthermore, that the capacity available be approved as the annual development allocation for 2020. All in favor of the motion? Motion's carried. Thank you. And we'll move to number 6, landfill compactor. Mr. McDonald.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I was hoping that this report wouldn't have to come this year. We were trying to manage to get through 2020 without looking at replacing our landfill packer. But as you will see in some of the attachments, we ran into issues with our powertrain. We knew that the machine was starting to give us problems and was reaching the end of its service life. We haven't invested a lot of maintenance dollars in this machine over the past few years for that very reason. I did have a previous question about the cost of maintenance, and I can tell you that in 2018 we spent $7,280 on that machine. And in 2019, we spent $9,967. And that does include the fuel that was used when the machine was operating. So as you can see, it's been a low cost maintenance item, but they're huge cost machines, very specialized machines. A landfill packer is not just a bulldozer with wheels. It's specially designed with a conical wheel that breaks the bags of garbage down and provides a very significant level of compaction for your landfill site. So the combination of a bulldozer for cover and for pushing garbage into place along with the landfill packer, it's essential to have both those operations to obtain the most capacity benefit that you can to extend the life of your landfill sites. And as we all know, operating landfill sites is an expensive proposition. Closed landfill site is extremely expensive, and these machines are incredibly expensive as well. A new landfill packer is in the area of $750,000. So they're massive machines that are very costly. So municipalities of our size don't normally purchase a new one or lease a new one, as you'll see in the analysis that I've done on what our options would be. Over a period of a life cycle, it is much more beneficial for us with our 2 landfill sites to buy a used unit. And I did some research through online sources, through dealers, and Marcel Equipment is a company that we have dealt with in the past. The predecessor to the current landfill packer was purchased from them. And they're in a specialized business where they take landfill packers that are 5 to 10 years old from the larger cities that have plans to rotate them through in that life cycle, and they rebuild them. They rebuild them top to bottom, very comprehensive rebuild of the machine. So when we have gone through that, we were able to secure a unit with them that is $265,000, and they've offered us $45,000 for our unit. I did ask them about the potential to rebuild the unit we have. However, based on the condition that it's in, its age and its number of hours, it wasn't financially practical to do so. It would have cost us probably in excess of that $220,000 that we would be spending net of the trade. Other options for used equipment were typically in the $265,000 plus. So this unit is one that just came in. It's just being refurbished right now as we speak. And I had spoke with the people at Marcel Equipment and asked them to just put it on hold for us till I could bring the report to council. The funding for this, although it wasn't a budgeted item in 2020, as I said earlier, I was hoping that we could bring this machine through to 2021, but we had a failure for the powertrain. And as a result, we haven't had the ability to provide compaction effort through the sheep's foot packer since the spring. So we are recommending that we move forward with the purchase of this from the landfill reserve, and that we get this compaction unit into the system so that with that and the bulldozer, we have the full complement we need to provide the best and achieve the best compaction we can to make sure that we extend the service life of our landfill sites and make sure that we continue to generate as much capacity as possible. So I'm open to questions, Mr. Mayor, on this. I know it's a bit of a surprise, but that's kind of the overview.
All right, thanks very much, Mr. McDonald. The only question I have before I move on is what year is the newer one that we're looking at the purchasing? I didn't see it in the, unless I missed it.
I'm not really sure what the year was. Normally they're based on hours. It's I think about 10 years old.
Okay, thank you. I had questions from Deputy Mayor Warden and I believe Councillor McDonnell.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Thanks for the report, Yon. My only question is why wasn't an RFP done? You had said it in the previous report that it gets a lot of people involved, and it looks like this is single sourced, and I'm just curious to know why maybe an RFP, maybe we could get a better deal.
Yeah, and through you, Mr. Mayor, this is a very specialized piece of equipment. There's only a few companies, Tormont, Cat, and Bomag, that make them new. And Tormont did not have any used units, and they provided pricing on the leased for new. And the only unit I was able to locate in with Bomag was in Germany for used units. So, and I went on Gov Deals as well to see if they're a kind of a municipal auction site that we've used sold equipment on. They didn't have any units. And I checked online, so I didn't see the value of an RFP in this case because it is such a specialized piece of equipment. And Marcel Equipment is in Ontario, they're in Western Ontario. And they're the only company that I know of in the province of Ontario that provides this type of work, rebuilding landfill packers. So it wasn't sole sourced, but there wasn't an RFP issued because of the specialization of the equipment.
Okay, thank you. Councillor McDonnell and then Councillor Jaworski.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Yoan, I'm just looking at your landfill packer options on the, I guess it'd be, what is that, page 38. Looking at the 3 options new and the 2 used ones you were able to track down, the annual cost, what does that annual cost entail? Does that include, is that just the purchase price? Or is that the estimated, is that including estimated maintenance and work that would have to be done to it, as well as fuel and a man running it for the hours we do run it a week?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor, this life cycle costing is only the value of the asset, and it doesn't include maintenance costs. It doesn't include labor costs. So that's the over the 15 years. That's the just straight line depreciation cost per year.
Subsequent, Mr. Mayor.
Go ahead.
Yoan, I guess you were saying in your report that anywhere from $6,000 to $9,000 was what we were paying for fuel and annual maintenance. Is that what you said on that machine?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, over the past 2 years, that was what we had expended. We had looked at just the repairs to the powertrain in early 2020 when we realized that the equipment was failing. And the quote just for that work alone was in excess of $125,000. And it didn't address any of the other items on the machine that needed to be rebuilt, repaired, replaced. So we started to look at other options at that point.
Okay, and I guess what kind of regular maintenance would go on with this machine in an annual basis? Like, I'm assuming it doesn't go far from the dump. We must be doing most of that out in the dump yard, or maybe down to towards the laneway or something.
Yeah, these machines are not machines that move around much. They basically tear up a float if you wanted to try and move them. So we only move them twice a year from North Lancaster site to Beaverbrook when we have the change in the landfill season. So the maintenance that's done is done on site. And essentially it's just, we need to make sure that we keep the wheels clean, that we, because it's only used for a short period of time every week, it's about 5 to 8 hours a week is what the machine is used for compaction. We need to make sure that we are there on a regular basis to make sure that the wheels are clean, that the fluids are up to the proper levels, to make sure that any maintenance issues the machine has are addressed in a speedy manner. We knew we had maintenance issues on this machine in the last year to 2, but we also knew that we were reaching the end of its service life and didn't want to make any big investments on maintenance items.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Jaworski. Then Councillor Lang.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. I have 2 questions, if I may. I'll start with my first one. Thank you, Mr. McDonald, for the report. My first question is, if you could just elaborate a bit more on what have we been doing since the machine went down in the spring? What have we been doing for the past several months to accomplish this work that's necessary?
Yeah, thank you. And through you, Mr. Mayor, what we have done the last few months is simply to push the garbage with a D7 dozer that does provide some level of compaction, but not nearly to what a landfill packer. So we have not been compacting the garbage itself, breaking down the bags, breaking down the garbage since this machine has been down, as we were just reviewing our various options. So since about the middle of March, start of April, our efforts have simply been to run over the garbage with the bulldozer, cover with the weekly cover, and the compaction effort has not been to what we would like to achieve.
Thank you. My other question, and it's sort of more higher, maybe I should call it a comment really, but it's a more high level with the table, the fleet table that was included in the staff report on page 39 of our package, listing all the different units that fall under infrastructure and, you know, their replacement value, their age, their years of service that are left. I guess I was a little bit surprised, or perhaps I wasn't anticipating that there would be so many pieces of equipment that, you know, had quote unquote 0 years of service left. I understand that, you know, in some cases that number, you know, maybe a bit conservative in the sense that, you know, we think, like in this case of the compactor, where we were hoping that it was going to last a little bit longer. But like I said, I was a little bit surprised by that. And, you know, particularly when I'm looking at, you know, there's 2 tandems that have, you know, 0 life left, and, you know, thinking that that's such a critical piece of equipment for our, you know, well, you know, maintaining our roads in the winter, et cetera. That I would like, I don't know if my co-councilors would agree on this, but I feel that we need to be like looking at the asset management planning for the fleet, I think, in a bit more detail to understand, you know, what's the replacement cycle that we're looking at for all these pieces of equipment, and what can we anticipate? Because I feel like perhaps we could have anticipated that the Packer, or at least council could have been aware that the Packer was coming, you know, now or next year, and then, you know, maybe we need to have a heads up for some of these other pieces of equipment that are coming in the future. So I know a lot of work's been done on the fire fleet, and to try and, you know, lay out how that's going to be rejuvenated, but I was hoping we could do something similar sooner rather than later on the fleet, on the roads fleet side, please.
Okay, thank you. Any comments, Mr. McDonald?
Yeah, no, I agree with, through you, Mr. Mayor, I agree with Councillor Jaworski. What we have on this asset management spreadsheet is the fleet, and basically its service life based on our estimate of service life, which is normally higher than the industry standard, as you will see. But we're also extending the service life of the equipment based on the condition and its ability to continue to serve. So I don't disagree that we couldn't be more aggressive with our fleet management replacement schedule, but the equipment, we've been pushing it out as much as we possibly can. We do have like the tandems that you mentioned. We have 9 tandems in the fleet, and if we replace one every 2nd year, that's an 18-year life cycle, which is pretty much what we're getting. So I think we're relatively comfortable with that, as long as we ensure that the equipment is maintained to the best standards we can possibly achieve. Right now, I think we're in a bit of a crunch with pickup trucks. Mr. Mills and I have had this discussion, and some of our other equipment that, for example, the grader that has a 0 service life, the 1994 grader. I'll just give an example, not to take up too much time, but it shows there it has 0 service life left. But what we'll be coming back with is that we're likely going to surplus that 2nd grader as a result of all the surface treatment we've been doing. We don't need 2 graders, so we'll be able to surplus that piece and dispose of it. So yeah, there is more work that needs to be done to advise council of our fleet asset management plan, and I look forward to working with Lachlan and Mr. Mills and the other users of our fleet as we move forward into the 2021 budget process, and providing that information to council so that you are aware and that these surprises don't come up.
Thank you very much. Yeah, if I may, I'm certainly not suggesting that we should necessarily accelerate our replacement cycle. I mean, I think it's excellent that we stretch it out as best we can. But also, if we know that we are stretching it out to the end, that I think, you know, that we're prepared, that we, you know, likely this one's going to go down next. And, you know, this is our plan for what we would like to do next time. Like, for example, with the compactor, to have a plan, you know, like we will likely go used because of these kinds of reasons. So thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Lang, and then Councillor McDonnell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you. Thank you, Ewan, for your presentation. I got a few comments. I appreciate everybody's comments ahead of mine. The first one, just a little bit of a, to give you a little bit of a hard time. It sounds like this machine went down in March. We're 6 months later and we're hearing about it tonight. Now, I guess some of us had some inkling of this in the last few months, just from rumblings we'd heard. But so we've been getting by, hiring somebody with a D6 dozer or whatever it was to pack the dump. I think myself, I would like, as Mr. Warski had said, I would like to hear a little more about our fleet. I'd like to see a little more in depth. You're telling me that we use it 5 to 8 hours a week. So that's $400 and some a year if we use it every single week of the year, or 400 and some hours a week. Yeah, if we use it every 400 and some hours a year, if we use it every week of that year. So it's not a terrible amount of hours compared to what some of our other machines. I'd like to know what this used one has on it for hours. If this one that we have lasted us 14,500 or whatever the hours were on it, so we can get some better idea of the life expectancy. I think this council is quite interested in moving things forward a little bit. I do think our fleet has kind of, we have some items that maybe should be changed. And I don't think we want to be too stingy about it, but we want to be involved. At least I do. I want to be a little more involved. I want to see the practicality of it. And, if we're getting a machine and we only use, a few hundred hours a year, that, the 14, that'd be 32 years if you bought a new one to get to the hours that we're at now. So just a little more. So my personal thing here is that maybe we get a little more detailed report and we look at this. We've been going 6 months now without it. I think we could make it another couple of weeks and go to the next council meeting. I don't know what everybody else is thinking. That's kind of where I'm at. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Councillor McDonnell.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'm going to agree with Councillor Lang on I'd like to see this hold off. As Councillor Lang said, we've gone 6 months without one. Let's continue to do what we're doing right now and get a better idea. I'd also like to see maybe some literature from these companies, and as to how much more life expectancy, say, we're getting out of our dump having these compactor wheels, because I think, in my personal opinion, maybe we would be better with a dozer and we'd get some benefit of it, either being able to do the covering ourselves as well, and maybe if ever we needed to use it elsewhere in the municipality, and also maybe look at the opportunity of not even owning the equipment and having it done on a contract basis with a local contractor. I think there's a lot more information, as Councillor Lang said. If we're going to get, another, I'm looking at the two options right here. You have service life on the two used options, both at 15. And there's $125,000 difference between the two machines. Yet they're still getting the same service life. What are the hours like on them? I'd like to see a picture of the machine. And to Councillor Jaworski's point on the maintenance of our fleet and where we're asset managed while we're doing our asset management plans, I'd like to see maintenance programs on the equipment. What's being done? It shouldn't be too difficult now as we're outsourcing our mechanics work, as well as we talk about all these machines at $200 and $500 and $600,000 machines. I'd like to see pictures of what we got, or at least be able to go down and see some of this equipment on maybe a rainy day or something and get a look at some of it. I don't know how rusted or how rotten they are in spots and what's good and what's bad. Our 94 grader has cost us less, I think, in maintenance in the last couple of years than our 2010 has. So maybe we should be disposing of our 2010 model.
Okay, thank you. Deputy Mayor Warden.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I won't say too much. I just want to comment that in my tenure working for McEwen Petroleum, I attended the dump out in the La Flèche dump multiple times, and they all have compactors. So I don't think replacing it with a dozer is something that we should even remotely consider to get the life out of our dump. I think this is the proper piece of equipment. They have multiple compactors at that dump, and they also have dozers. They complement each other, but the compactor has a vital role to get the compaction level down, and then the dozer covers it with the topsoil. So I just wanted to make that point. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And then I'm going to go to Mr. Mills, if you would, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, through you. So Mr. McDonald's given you a detailed report on the compactor. You've had a lot of discussion on this. What I would suggest is we're being very proactive with our discussions with general managers about budget efficiencies. Mr. McDonald, treasurer, has done a considerable amount of work with asset management, which includes a listing of the fleet, like Councilor Jaworski had mentioned earlier. One thing I'd like to put before council is we have the 2 budget presentations days set aside in November where we could go into comprehensive detail with the fleet, where we'd have decisions to make based on, you know, how comfortable are you in terms of spending funds or reserves that are set aside to bring it up to speed. Certainly, I'm not comfortable either as the CAO with a number of items that are at zero life. But also we need to be mindful of the, you know, we're in austerity, we're in COVID, but we have to have the proper machinery and equipment in terms of performance and health and safety too. So that's an idea to bring something comprehensive to you for the 2 budget meetings for a decision for all of the fleet as we move forward.
Okay, thank you. Deputy Mayor Warden.
Sorry, just a real quick supplement. So in my opinion, there's 2 major pieces of information lacking. The age of this piece of equipment that you want us to purchase and the amount of hours on it. You gave us all other metrics about it, but I think that was kind of the 2, like, you know, we see how many hours our old one has, but we don't know how many hours the new one has. So I think if those 2 pieces of information would have been on this report, I think would have made me more comfortable moving forward.
Okay,
Thank
so
you.
I think it's the wishes of council maybe to defer this to the next meeting. Mr. McDonald, if you can bring back more information in respect of this certain equipment here. I know if it, you know, depending on the hours that's on it, I know what you're saying earlier that it's completely rebuilt, so it's kind of rebuilt as fairly new, a new one again. But it'd be nice to hear the year and the pictures of it, like Councilor McDonnell asked for, and Councilor Lang in regards to the mileage that's on it or the hours that's on it. So I think that's council's request is to defer this to the next meeting. If I could just show of hands if that's what you're wishing for. So, okay, so we'll defer this until the next council meeting, if you would, Mr. McDonald, and bring back more information at that point.
Yeah, I do have that information. My apologies for not including it in the report.
Okay, thank you. And we'll move to number 7, winter stone dust.
Mr. Mayor?
Yep, sorry.
One more request, Mr. McDonald. Would it be possible as well to see some if you have a chance to add on some of the literature, I guess, that goes along with using compactors? I appreciate Deputy Mayor Warden's comments, but at the same time, we're not the La Flèche dump taking garbage in from the city of Ottawa and the city of Toronto. I'd like to see a little more information on it.
Most certainly through you, Mr. Mayor, that there are studies available to provide council with hopefully a better level of comfort with this purchase.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And number 7 is the winter stone dust RFQ. Mr. McDonald.
Yeah, thank you. Unfortunately, we only had one submission on the stone dust. The other company that typically would provide us with a bid has run into a bit of an inventory issue with some of the major projects they've had this year, and they weren't able to supply us. So I have spoke with them too, and just to make sure that this was a one-off situation, and they have assured me that that is the case. So I have also in meetings last week with some of the other road managers in SDNG, spoke with them about the prices they were getting for stone dust, and the prices that we've been given by Cornwall Gravel are competitive based on what's in the SDG area. And I think this is just a blip for the other contractor, Coco, that they didn't have sufficient supply of stone dust to meet the requirements that we had. So we are recommending that we proceed with the request for quotation to Cornwall Gravel as per their submission of $11.85 per ton for Airport Road site and $13.95 per ton for North Lancaster. Should mention that as a result of last winter, we are likely going to be over budget in our winter item, both on the material and on the effort side. We had a lot of freezing rain, freeze thaw cycles, and icy road conditions last year that generated a bigger need for material. But at the end of the year, when we do our inventories, we will make an adjustment for the material that's left in those facilities for the 2020 year. So some of that cost will be transferred over into 2021 when the material will be used. But there'll be further information on this as we move forward to budget. But we do expect that we'll likely be over budget in the winter roads operations by the end of this year.
Okay, thank you. I believe there's a question from Councillor McDonnell.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. McDonald, why is North Lancaster, I guess, significantly higher? I just noticed that comparing to last year's submission by Cornwall Gravel, the $13.95 per ton is the same for North Lancaster, and we're down 10. They came in a little more aggressive for Airport Road at 10. Is it just logistically for them to get it? It's the extra $2 and the smaller volume, I'd assume?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, it is essentially the cost for trucking the material from the Cornwall quarry to North Lancaster, where the other contractor has quarries in Green Valley and Lagan and other areas in that vicinity. So unfortunately, last year the contract was split, with Cornwall Gravel providing the materials for Airport Road and Coco providing to North Lancaster. And unfortunately this year we weren't able to get a price from Coco.
Subsequent, Mr. Mayor.
Mhm.
I guess just a comment on your mention of the budget potentially being over, looking that we will be going over maybe in the next couple of years. I'd rather be under budget because we budgeted a little too much, especially on road maintenance. I think this will be my going into third budget here with the council, and it'll be 3 years in a row we're over budget on road maintenance. So maybe for the winter maintenance, it'd be maybe ideal to forecast that a little better as we go forward. It's hard to get an idea what the weather's going to do, but I'd rather come in above and transfer that elsewhere.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments or questions from members of the council? Not seeing none, I have a motion moved by Stephanie Jaworski, second by Martin Lang. Be resolved that staff report 125-2020 be received and that the quotation for the supply of winter stone dust be awarded to Cornwall Gravel Company Limited as per their quote of $11.95 per ton for the Airport Road site and $13.95 per ton for the North Lancaster Patrol Yard. Hear the motion, all in favor? Motion's carried. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. McDonald, for all your presentations. We'll move to number 8, water rates, industrial, commercial, and institutional. Mr. Lachlan McDonald.
Oh, hello. Can you hear me? I'm using my phone. Yep. Oh, great. Okay, thank you. So this is a continuation of our water conversation. You'll see on page 42 or 1 of 3 of this report kind of goes over what we had discussed last time, just to give you a little update. Those aren't decisions for this moment, but just to keep everything in order. We did review, as you can see on the last page, which is page 44 of 219 or 3 of 3. We assessed the ICI properties, which is industrial, commercial, and institutional, for their equivalent household consumption. Further information was requested of me. So the Flying J, if we put that property on there, pays equivalent of 24.5 homes, and the River Garden, which is just down the street from our office, pays 18.3 equivalent households. So what this is recommending is we maintain our water rates as they are, no special charge for ICI users because they pay in their usage versus having to pay a little bit more upfront in a fixed cost. And this report was heavily crafted through Marco. So if you have any questions, feel free to ask.
Okay, thank you. Any questions from members of council? Councilor Jaworski.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. I suppose maybe more of a comment than a question, but I I appreciate that the report has had a very, I guess, simple and elegant comparison of, commercial rates versus how, like, the way it compared it to households, not households. However, I suppose I'm a little I feel that it's almost too simplistic, though. I guess I was expecting perhaps more of maybe comparator how other municipalities deal with commercial rates, and thank you for the additional examples that you gave. I mean, and I guess this is where I still have, perhaps I just need a little bit more time to look at this, but like, for example, with the River Gardens, if it's equivalent to 18.3 households. However, if we think about who's actually living there and the number of residents that are there, I think there's less than 30. So I have a hard time thinking that, seniors who are living in quite small, I mean, maybe calling them apartments is probably a bit of a stretch. They're more like suites that are equivalent to 18.3 households. So I like I said, perhaps I need to look at this a bit longer. Maybe that's my bigger issue, but it doesn't quite seem quite right with me. So I feel like I need a bit more information, perhaps, or maybe like those multi-residential units, like the River Gardens, perhaps should be treated differently. And, it could come down to just the fact that, we've had all these concerns about long-term care homes and homes for seniors, and, ensuring that, they're well taken care of, that, the water rates that goes to these sites, of course they are, Chartwell and River Gardens are both, for-profit, entities. However, the charges that go to them do get passed down to the residents. So perhaps that's also playing into my my questioning of this information. So thank you for doing this. But yes, I guess I'd like to say that I was expecting a bit more comparators.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions or comments from members of council? Not seeing none, I have a motion moved by Lyle Warden, second by Sam McDonnell. Be resolved that staff report 126-2020 be received and that the council of the Township of South Glengarry does not introduce special ICI water and sewer rates within the next water rate bylaw. You heard the motion, all in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. McDonald. And I lost my agenda. Okay, the next one on the agenda would be Mr. McDonald. Go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is Grinley Hill Cemetery. I'm sure you remember them. Basically, we had transferred it to St. Andrews and Knox United in Banesville in October of 2019. What they would like to do is have the municipality not be involved. So they're asking us to decline the right to administer the trust for perpetual care. I think this should be graciously accepted to those who were in favor of moving it, as well as those who are not, because it is removing us, the government, from a very, I'd say, important patch of Glengarry earth for all those involved. So I would hope this would be well received, one, by the current committee, and two, by the former committee, as it gets the government out of their cemetery, which I think would be well received, or I'd hope it would be well received.
Yeah, okay, thank you for that. Any questions or comments from council? We've discussed this many times over the last couple of years. Not seeing that, a motion moved by Martin Lang, second by Lyle Warden. Be resolved that staff report 127-2020 be received and that the council of the corporation of the Township of South Glengarry decline the right to administer the trust fund for the perpetual care and maintenance of Grinley Hill Cemetery. All in favor of the motion? Motion's carried, thank you. And we'll move to number 10, municipal drains, Raisin River Park property. Mr. McDonald.
Yes, thank you. I'm just scrolling to get it. So that's the property. It's for the MTO. They're looking at moving moving their waste scale operation to west of the Raisin River, just west of Lancaster. The picture on page 51 kind of shows you the land that is owned by the MTO. They have approached us in kind of informally to see if we'd be willing to allow them to absorb all the costs of the initial construction. I want to be clear too that future maintenance would be charged amongst those benefiting landowners. So the original construction, which is 400,000 to 500,000, would be borne by MTO. Subsequent maintenance would be borne by those local users who benefit from it. And speaking with our drainage supervisor, he said it would be great to allow some people who have tiled their land to tile in. And I suppose the only, and I didn't, under point A and B, under point 14, they've kind of said that one, we can charge them as we go, like as they go along, so it has to come through the township, or we can charge them once the work is all done. So that's $400,000 to $500,000. It would be a cash flow issue. We do in our bank typically have that amount and considerably more, so I'm not concerned about that. I would prefer to negotiate with them that it is we receive a bill and then we put it to them to pay us immediately, just so we don't run into having this $400,000 to $500,000 debt. Not debt, but lack of cash in our bank. The one thing you'll note there is it is a competitive process with Dillon. We normally go RFP with our engineers reports, and the reason that is because Dillon's already doing the MTO site plan, and they've requested it that way. And since the initial construction, as MTO is prepared to pay 100%, I don't feel it is one, charging our taxpayers, and two, even on a local area improvement charge, it's not on our taxpayers too. So that's where this report is. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'll open it to questions of members of council. Councillor Lang.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you. Mr. McDonald, I have a couple of questions, and I think you alluded to them. So I think I just want to verify that I'm on the right track here. Is the MTO looking to have this municipal drain engineered and dug to do that whole catchment area, or are they just looking to do the old park where they're going to build, their new weigh scale? Or are they going to continue on, to the west and get that whole catchment area right to Fraser Road?
I'm not perfectly certain onto the exact part. I've just spoken to the gentleman at Dillon Consulting initially to see what MTO was suggesting. They will be using that access road, the former Raisin River Park Road. It wouldn't be unforeseen that they would want to have that all properly drained. And I believe, and I'm probably 80% confident, I don't normally speak at 80% confidence, that it would move westward, because some of the names mentioned by our drainage superintendent were westward. I won't identify them, but we're all familiar with a few of those properties back there. So those names were brought up, but I can confirm that at a later date.
Can I continue with my?
Yep, go ahead.
I'm hoping that it is moving westward, because the park and the part that they want to use is the closest piece to the river. So if they are not going westward, it's only going to benefit them. And as far as I'm concerned, that whole chunk of land in between the railroad tracks and the 401 there, the whole drainage issue in there was caused by the railroad tracks and the 401. Both of them are raised up, and they basically, shut the drainage down in that area. It was enough for surface drainage maybe years ago in a kind of a poor way, but now that the land is being farmed a little better and drains are installed in the ground and stuff, there's just no outlet for a lot of those fields. And I know some of those guys down there are pumping water for quite a bit of the year, putting electric pumps in and trying to pump water to get it out of there. So I hope that we push them to make sure that this is a chance for them to rectify a problem that they created many years ago. And I'd like to see them to take it right to Fraser Road there and solve that whole issue.
Okay, I'll have a subsequent contact with their engineer, and I might come to council with an info report with that update once I have a 100% answer for you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor McDonnell.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I had just a few little questions. Councillor Lang addressed a few of them. I would like to see a proposed line as to where they plan to put it. I'd hate for them to put it right up the middle of the field, and then you're trying to drain water north from the south end. And I guess as far as my questions more pertain to damage if they are going west, damage to crop or rerouting tiles and things such as that. Are they responsible for all those costs if they are going to be putting a municipal drain in, or how much do they consider damages that they'll pay? Mute.
I believe point 14A towards the end, the cost of allowances for land used for the drain construction for damages to lands as defined within the drainage report and being a part of the overall design cost would be paid by the municipality to the landowners being compensated, and then would be invoiced to the MTO. So if there were damages to the land, we would pay the landowners and the MTO would reimburse us. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I guess it was more or less just if they are going to be digging that, I would hope they would be working with the adjacent landowners and the people that they will be putting a line through. It could be very beneficial to them if they, but so long as there's some good lines of communication between them and the MTO and the company doing the ditch.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions or comments from members of council? Councillor Warden?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, it looks as though option A kind of seems to be the best option. As it says, as it outlines that if there is damages, we can work with our local landowners. That kind of seems to be the best option. And I'd like to think that the MTO will, work in good faith with us.
Okay, thank you. That was my next question. There was options A or B. So Mr. Warden is putting forward option A. I have show of hands if everyone's interested in option A. Not seeing none. One. I'll go to Mr. McDonald first. Do you have a preference in respect of A or B?
I would prefer the one where we get the billing and then we push it to MTO immediately versus interim finance the whole project and then bill out MTO. That being said, I wanted the latitude that if that was a sticking point, that we could still go into it based on our cash situation. We're not hurting. There would be a preferred option, yes, A, and then secondly would be B if A is not possible. And if something changes materially from there, again, you'd see a staff report. And yeah, I guess I asked for A and B just in case one's not possible. I didn't want to encumber council 2 times if both options are okay.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Lang.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you. I'm assuming that these are just 2 different ways of financing this, and that the company should have to look out for the landowners and compensate them with no matter which program we go with. Would I not be correct there?
You are correct, yes.
Yeah, so I think basically is option A is that we're charging the MTO immediately instead of financing it under option B until we're completed and then trying to get MTO to pay us after the fact. Is that clarification, I guess?
That's correct. That's correct.
Okay, so I'll go back to ask who's in favor of option A. Okay, so we got 3, 4. All right, so we're going to go with option A. If there's any changes to that, Mr. McDonald, you can bring it back at a later date.
Okay, just the way I wrote the recommendation, you might have to eliminate or B in the resolution.
Yeah, no, it's okay. I think. I have a motion moved by Sam Actonel, second by Stephanie Jaworski. Be resolved that staff report 128-2020 be received and the council of the corporation of the township of South Glengarry approve administration entering into an agreement with MTO to appoint Dillon Consulting for the design of the unnamed municipal drain and financing under option A as outlined in staff report. All in favor of the motion? Motion's carried. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. McDonald. We'll move to number 11, accessibility funding and modernization. Mr. Ladisar.
Hello, everyone.
Good evening.
Good. Yeah, so the information report or the report I put before you is to go ahead with Noble as the winner of our proposal as far as the accessibility report is concerned. They came in substantially less than the other two. And I think this is a really positive step forward as far as getting all of our recreation facilities and the majority of our facilities to the next step as far as the accessibility report was mandated. And so I'm just looking for some support.
Okay, thank you. Deputy Mayor Warden.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Rick, thanks very much for this report. I'm very happy to see this on the table. There was a lot of things that got kind of fell behind the wayside on that accessibility report, and I feel like you've picked up and ran with it. So I'm 100% in favor of proceeding with this project. We have the funds to do it with the modernization, so it's not impacting your budget or the township's budget. So I think it's win-win for everyone. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Warden. I think the other thing that, if through you, Mr. Mayor, that should be noted that this work would be accomplished by our own staff, and I think that's very important. I know that many of you talk about efficiencies, and I think this is another example of our staff being able to step up and provide those efficiencies and quality of work. And so I'm very excited about the next steps, and we want to take further steps for accessibility.
Great, thank you. Councillor Jaworski.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you very much, Mr. Ladisar, for continuing to plow forward on on the accessibility work that, you know, we have a decent list to tackle, and I appreciate you making headway on it. I was hoping you could provide just a little bit more detail on like where this work is happening. Like, is it really all across all the buildings, or is it really concentrated in a few of them? If you could provide some more detail on that, please.
Essentially, it's being done with the facilities that we have in South Glengarry, primarily the recreation facilities, but we are tackling some of the other facilities that we have, such as Landshar, that desperately need this service because they have many people who use their facility that need the accessibility through this funding. So I would say majority has to do with recreation, but I think it's a positive step forward in terms of moving the whole accessibility forward, including the township office as well.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Matinel.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Ladisar, thank you for your report. We spoke a little bit earlier today on a little bit more information. Just for myself in the future, I would like to see a little bit more information in the report, more, I guess, more focused as to how many nozzles, what buildings are going into, and especially when it comes to water and wastewater inside washrooms, especially for me. I'd like to see them on, I guess, touchless taps are more appealing to me on buildings where we are on our own municipal water and we are treating that water and paying it ourselves. They aren't as big a concern to me, say in North Lancaster, where we aren't paying for that service. Nonetheless, that's little comparisons for myself going forward I'd like to see. Yeah, no, I guess I'll leave that.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor, I would like to also mention that this was done through the report that was given to us a number of years ago. And what we're doing is basically complying with that report. So this was sort of a foregone conclusion from my point of view as to what needed to be done. I know that Deputy Mayor Warden was a part of that report, and ensuring that we are meeting all of the areas that and facilities that needed to be serviced. So I think that's an important point, that we're simply complying with the report.
Councillor McDonnell.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. I guess this may be more a question for yourself, Deputy Mayor. I guess part one, could myself, I know, a copy of this report. Obviously, if we aren't complying, we need to get up to date. For myself, I'm sure Councillor Jaworski and Lang would also be interested as well. And I guess it's an accessibility report, but what is this? Is this a we must comply, or is this a highly suggested we comply? It's just in the era of COVID, whenever I would prefer to not spend money. We're spending 25,000 on taps and valves and urinals.
Okay, are you asking, Councillor McDonnell, are you asking for the accessibility plan that we have? Is that what you're looking for?
Yeah, I guess if possible, where it was. This doesn't come back on Mr. Ladisser because he would never given it, or not to my knowledge anyways, that I have it. And my other question was, is this plan just a plan that the municipality has, or is this legislatively we have to complete these tasks outlined in?
Okay, Mr. Ladisser, I'm not sure if you heard him right from the beginning, but he broke out for me, so I'm not sure if you caught everything he's looking for.
I would say Deputy Warden would probably have some more information on this. I'm simply complying with the report that was presented to me early in my hiring of the position, that this was something that needed to be completed. So maybe Mr. Warden, you would want to respond.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. So this was a report done back in 2010, and it made recommendations for all these things that would make the township more accessible to all residents. And I take part of the blame that it never got done, because I was on council for a good period of the time. And then with this modernization money, it's not money that we're spending. It's being used at a time. Yes, it's COVID, but the money is given to us from the province to modernize our facilities. And I mean, if you can reduce the amount of water you're using, and you can make the faucet more accessible to someone who isn't physically, has to have a wheelchair or needs support, I think it's a win-win for the township. And I know it sounds silly, we're spending 25,000 on faucets, but we've got the money to do it. And I think it's about time. Like, this report was done in, I believe it's 2010. I think you would have had a copy of it, Sam. We had talked about this in numerous council meetings before.
Through you, Mr. Mayor.
Through
you, Mr. Mayor, I would just maybe remind people that actually COVID actually is probably a catalyst for ensuring that we are not touching faucets and handles on faucets. I think that this is a really positive step forward, where we're ensuring that we're doing our due diligence as far as COVID is concerned. So I think it's a very positive step forward, and I think it also falls nicely in line with what we're having to deal with. I wish we could do more. I wish we could do, toilets and automatic flushes, but unfortunately, our infrastructure doesn't really it doesn't comply with all. It would be quite costly to sort of take that next step. But I think this is a nice step forward, although maybe not as far as we would like it to go, but I think it's a positive step.
Okay, thank you. I believe those documents are on our website, Mr. McDonnell, if you're looking for those. But I think
just to clarify, is this the same document where through outlines our thoughts and things that we have addressed already?
Is the question directed at me?
No, it was to Mayor Preble. We've looked at some of this already, or Mr. McDonald maybe could answer that.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I can speak to it if you don't mind.
Okay.
So accessibility plan, we brought it in March for final reading. This is something we look at every year. We do speak to our accessibility at the county level. And we had identified this as some of the issues that we have in our facilities is that we don't have accessible faucets. So this was something that was on our list to do. We do recognize that it is a significant cost, but by doing these things when we're able, we are knocking things off the list that need to be identified. I'm sure Mr. McDonald will speak to that as well. And as Mr. Lattersher said, this is an item that in the times of COVID, the less contacts we have in those communal areas, it's not a bad thing.
You're muted, Frank.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor, I believe you're on mute, but I believe you just acknowledged this is the report that we have used to update the entrances to many of our recreation facilities with push pads and doors that open to an accessible standard. We've improved ramps at the library, at the Smithfield Park. We've included parking space markings. So a lot of the big ticket items, although there's still a lot more work to do, as Mr. Lattersher has noted, we have done a fair bit with a lot of the big ticket items. Where we kind of fell off the wagon was that we weren't dealing with some of the, I won't say they're smaller items, but there were some of the little initiatives that we had committed to complete, such as the taps and faucets and things like that, that we didn't do. So we kind of got our knuckles wrapped by the committee last year for not doing some of the smaller stuff, although we had been fairly successful with some of the bigger stuff. So I'm pleased to see the progress on the accessibility plan, and I'm sure that Mr. Lattiser will have us in good hands with the work that he's completing now and what he will be doing in the future.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions or comments?
Just one through you, Mr. Mayor. I wanted to emphasize.
None. I have a motion moved by Lyle Warden, second by Martin Lang. Be it resolved. Sorry,
Mr. Mayor, just through you. I just wanted to mention that this work is going to be completed by our staff. So, Mrs. Jaworski talks about efficiencies. I think this is a great example of another one where we're not having to outsource the work. It'll all be done in-house. So this is the very raw costs of the faucets and the mixing valves that we need to do, and the 8 urinals. It will be all done in-house. So I just thought that's noteworthy. I'm sure Mrs. Jaworski would appreciate that.
I'm sure she does. Yep.
Thank you.
You got a thumbs up. So
thank you.
Thank you. I have a motion moved by Lyle Warden, second by Martin Lang. Be resolved that $25,600 be allocated from the modernization funding for the completion of the accessibility facilities implementation plan in the township's recreation facilities. You heard the motion. All in favor? Motion's carried. Thanks very much, Mr. Lattiser, for your report.
Thank you.
And we'll move to number 12, site plan control agreement approval, 9256-1950 Quebec Incorporated. Mrs. Haley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This report is actually an addendum to a site plan that was previously approved in 2014. You may recall when the construction occurred at 2007 County Road 2 for Midland Resource Recovery. That's the name of the business, despite the numbered company. And this is a property that's used for a workshop and professional offices where they assemble, I believe it's carbon filters for the pipeline, and these products go all over the world. So the applicant is proposing to construct a 278 square meter addition, which is approximately 3,000 square feet. And this will just provide additional space for their company to continue to be successful and meet their needs. This process has gone through our normal approval process, whereby it's reviewed by the building official, our fire chief, the United Counties Transportation Department, and the RSCA. And they all approved the plan, had no concerns. And the reason for the attached agreement is simply an addendum to the original agreement in 2014. So if there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Okay, Deputy Mayor Warden.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I just want to say I'm looking forward to seeing this. I've been on site before. It's a very clean and it's a beautiful facility. So I'm happy that they're in the area of expansion. Ms. Haley, just a quick question. Does it require them to upgrade their septic system? Is that something that they have to do? Because there are, it's just a question.
So through you, Mr. Mayor, it does not. It's been preliminarily reviewed both by our building official as well as the engineering firm Para di Stefano that submitted the site plan. They've completed the review as well. And I think it's because it's the type of building and the use of the building that's not triggering an additional washroom or any other fixtures.
Good to hear. Just that's not that old of a building. So
no, not at all.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions or comments? Not seeing none. I have a motion moved by Stephanie Jaworski, second by Sam McDonnell. Be resolved that staff report 130-2020 be received and that the Council of the Township of South Glengarry approves bylaw 54-2020 and the addendum to the site plan control agreement for the property legally described as parts of lot D and E. Concession 1 being part of 1 on reference plan number 14R-253 in the geographic township of Schlumberg, Township of South Glengarry, County of Glengarry, Ontario, also known as 20007 County Road 2, and authorizes the mayor and clerk to execute the site plan control agreement. All in favor of the motion? Motion's carried. Thank you. And number 13 is community improvement plan. Mrs. Haley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The beginning of 2020, our Community Improvement Advisory Committee, as well as members of council, began discussing different changes that should occur to the community improvement plan to increase uptake in the community and to grant some additional dollars into our businesses and residents located in the community improvement plan area. So we listened to the feedback. We had a meeting in May presenting some of the information we had received and suggestions we had received to council. We also held a formal public meeting and then created the amendments to the community improvement plan. There was not a lot of changes made to the plan. You will see in my staff report in number 6, I've summarized the changes. To be honest with you, a lot of it was really, correcting some statements, grammatical errors, improving the formatting. But the biggest changes that have occurred that will impact our community will be some suggestions that our council members made is increase the accessibility grant from a previous maximum of $5,000 or 50% up to $5,000. And now it's up to $10,000. And that's for exterior. And then it was an increase from $2,500 to $5,000 for the interior. Another suggestion that the committee made, as well as, council made, I should say, is to have constant intake just to keep the process rolling. And then we've also made some minor boundary changes. One of them was to include the curling club in Lancaster, as that was a request that was received. And then again, just some improved wording. One of the requirements of the process is to send our plan off to the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing for review to ensure that it conforms to the Ontario Planning Act and other provincial policies. We did that. We had very few comments that they provided to us. The comments they did provide were very constructive. We did incorporate a couple of the changes that they suggested. However, some of their suggestions were bigger picture thinking, like coming up with plans for affordable housing, dealing with employment district lands. And they're great comments, typical to meet provincial policy, but not necessarily applicable to our specific community improvement plan. But nevertheless, we did follow the process and received their support. So before you tonight is the final document for first, second, and third reading. If this is approved, I will then issue a notice of decision that will go in the newspaper, and it will be subject to a 20-day appeal period. Following the completion of the appeal period, we'll be able to implement the newly completed plan, and hopefully we'll have some applications come forward, especially in the accessibility area. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. Deputy Mayor Warden.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Thanks very much, Joanne, for this this updated CIP. I'm very proud of the changes that we've made, and I think that we should this be approved by the powers that be. I think we're going to be seen as you know, setting a trend towards really encouraging accessibility grants in our municipality. And I like the fact that we are also opening it across the board. With no times. I think we're going to see an uptick. I'm hoping we'll see an uptick and the budget emptied every year. Thank you very much for all your efforts. It's definitely showed. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor McDonnell.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Ms. Haley, for all your work on this. I know you worked quite a bit with this, as well as with Mrs. Bingley. Yeah, as Deputy Mayor Warden said, I think we're going to set a precedent, maybe especially in the accessibility side. A lot of these businesses, maybe they'll be postponed. The requirements will be postponed due to COVID, but I strongly suggest that any business in the area that does not quite conform to what the province is going to be looking for, especially some of the restaurants, even in Lancaster, for accessibility to get in and out of different parts of the restaurants, and as well as bathrooms is a major issue in some places, do apply, because we have upping this, I think, will really increase our uptake on the program.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments or questions? Not seeing none. I have a motion moved by Martin Lang, second by Sam McDonnell. Be resolved that staff report 131-2020 be received, and a bylaw 55-2020 being a bylaw to adopt community improvement plan be read a first, second, third time, passed, signed, and sealed in open council this 8th day of September 2020. All in favor of the motion? Motion's carried. Thank you. Thank you, Mrs. Haley. I have a motion moved by Martin Lang, second by Lyle Warden. Be resolved that the council of the Township of South Glengarry accepts the items presented on the agenda as committee reports for information purposes only. All in favor of the motion? Motion's carried. Thank you. We'll move to unfinished business. Docks on township properties. Mr. McDonald, I believe, are in the right process. We just went through 2 of them this evening. So the rest of them, do you know when they're coming to the table?
Well, as we get the signed offers to purchase, we'll be bringing them forward. We have received for responses from, I believe, all but 2 of the property owners in that area. So I think we're progressing well, and probably over the next, certainly likely will be more reports for the next council meeting, and then hopefully in the next 1 to 2 council meetings, I'm hoping we'll have all of these properties dealt with.
Okay, I just want them to make sure that they do realize that the outcome in respect that if they do not purchase the properties, that their docks and everything will have to be removed.
Yes, we have sent a letter to that effect.
Okay, thank you. I just don't want to see it going on until next spring and summer comes along, and then we're going through the same process where they're using their docks, but they're not purchasing the property. So
certainly,
we can wrap up this by fall. That would be greatly appreciated. Number 2 is the fire protection ponds.
Yeah, we've recently received a response from Pactiv that they are probably not interested in purchasing that pond. And I've had discussions with our fire chief, Mr. Robertson, about the potential to look at that pond for service of other properties, and we'll be further discussing, looking at how we can sustain the pond. It has been refilled to meet the requirements of the agreement that we have, but we may be taking a bit of a left turn here and looking at other options that could involve other properties on Richmond Road. But more to come, and there'll be a report to council this fall.
Okay, thank you. And municipal servicing from the city of Cornwall.
Yeah, we're proceeding along with the, we'll be setting up meetings with the property owners to discuss the costs, and then we'll be bringing a report to council about what the options are for either with the agreement with the city of Cornwall or Plan B, if you will.
Thank you. And private roads development, the document?
Nothing on this one at this point. That'll be something I'll work on through this fall.
And Williamstown Garage and Fire Hall?
Yeah, the road optimization study is progressing. We've had a few meetings with the consultant to overview the current routes, to look at some options, and they're at the present time just completing their modeling, and they'll be bringing a report back, presenting their findings, and likely the first meeting in October.
Okay, thank you. And the LED streetlights for Glen Walter?
We've been in communications mostly through Mr. Mills and the general manager of Cornell Electric on this file, and they are working towards getting the numbers together, and hopefully we'll have something from them that we can present to council in the very near future.
That'd be great to hear. Thank you. And the Glen Walter looping project?
The tenders were issued for the looping project, as well as the upgrades to the Bray Street pumping station. They close on the 10th of September, this coming Thursday, and a report to award that work will be coming forward at the next council meeting. We are intending on having most of the work, if not all of it, done this fall. There may be some issues with some of the delivery of the mechanical items for the pumping station based on the current pandemic situation, but we'll try and deal with them. The attempt will be, or the effort will be, to at the very least have all the pipe in the ground and to have the roads reconstructed to granular level. Depending on weather conditions, we may defer putting the asphalt lift on until the spring of 2021. Again, that'll be weather dependent, and if we can get the asphalt down, we will.
Okay, thank you very much. And we'll move to Hamlet signage policy. Mrs. Haley?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. There's still quite a bit of writing to do in the policy. If we can spend some time on it, maybe have it on the September 21st agenda. If not, it should be shortly thereafter, but that's my goal.
Appreciate it. Thank you. And number 12 and 14, water review rates and water bill design. Mr. McDonald? Can't hear you for some particular reason. It's not showing you're on mute, though.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay. As I said, I'm using the phone, so I have to unmute it 2 places, but that's my bad. Okay, thank you. So the ICI report was on this evening. I think that Councillor Jaworski, as well as a few other councillors, had shown interest in the past to getting some community feedback on this. So I suppose that will be the next step. I think Deputy Mayor Warden has something to say.
Go ahead, Deputy Mayor Warden.
Thank you, through Mr. Mayor. Lachlan, was my understanding that there was going to be a review on the residential rates alongside with the commercial. I mean, we stopped a tax increase, a water rate increase a year ago this past week, and there's been nothing come back on that area. Is that coming still? Because it shows that it's completed.
Okay, so we had discussed, and I think there was no decision at last council whenever Marco had the conversation. That was Glen Walter, a regional rate, separate rates, a bill decrease. So we'll come back with that information for decision as well.
So that's still coming back then?
Yes, yeah, because we hadn't made a decision. I think there was some thoughts towards regional, some thoughts towards keeping the rate as they are, and some thought towards potentially being able to decrease it depending on what council was. So we didn't make a decision on that, but that's upcoming.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
And then the bill, of course, will happen after we sort it out. So
the bill's coming. It's been on hold for a while.
Yes, as soon as we get the rate solution down, then we'll, as you said, maybe use some modernization funding and get Adam to write a custom.
That can't be done at the same time?
I suppose I can talk to them, yeah, and then see if anything we changes. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, everyone. I have a motion moved by Stephanie Jaworski, second by Martin Lang. Be resolved that the Council of the Township of South Glengarry convene to close session at 8:59 p.m. to discuss the following items under Section 239 of the Municipal Act. A meeting or part of a meeting may be closed to the public if the subject matter being considered is litigation or potential litigation, including matters before administrative tribunals affecting the municipality or local board. Staff report 132-2020, and that would be Mrs. McDonald. You heard the motion. All in favor? Motion's carried. Thanks very much, staff and the public watching us this evening.